Joining me now, CNN counterterrorism analyst Phil Mudd. He's a former FBI senior intelligence advisor. Also with us is Cheryl Dorsey. She's a retired sergeant with the Los Angeles Police Department. Phil, let me start with you. Again, there's a lot here that's unclear. To be clear, there's a lot that we don't know. One thing we do know is that there was a period of time, whether it be 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, a period of time when law enforcement was here, was on the scene, but was not going in to try to stop this shooter. How do you explain that?
Well, first of all, what I want to see is what you've been talking about to make sure that we understand that timeline and that what the media is reporting about an air gap is actually what we saw in fact. There are a lot of facts law enforcement can access. Those facts are going to be contradictory, which is why I'm judging that we haven't seen a full report yet. That is, one person says one thing, one person says another thing, the radio dispatches say a third thing. How do you fit that together so that when police talk to the media, there is one story that doesn't change every 12 hours? The second question to your point about air gaps, I want to know, we're talking about the gap in entry. I want to know about whether there was a gap in policy, procedure, and training in what the police did. For example, if there's a way that they've been trained to enter a closed building, this is a classic, how you clear a room, a classic police exercise, SWAT exercise. Was there a difference between what they're trained to do? Remember, we saw that at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, the high school shooting years ago. Was there a gap between what they're trained to do and what they did? So I can understand the delay in timing. I'm not sure there's a mistake yet, though.
Yeah, Sergeant Dorsey, you and I have already had a chance to talk about this today, but one of the things we do know is there are different agencies at play. There's the school resource officer, there's the local police, and ultimately there's Customs and Border Patrol, and it was their tactical unit that did go in when it was time, or when they finally decided to go in some hour later. But what questions do you have about the timing here?
Well, we assume that all training is standardized and everyone operates the same. And we know now that this isn't true. I hope that whatever after action report comes from this incident, everyone will have an opportunity to try to get their agencies on the same page so that they can respond uniformly and in a timely manner. But, John, what I'm more important about the timeline that troubles me is since the beginning of 2012 with the Sandy Hook shooting, Republicans, specifically Governor Abbott, have been unable to have an appetite to really pass substantive gun reform legislation. The GOP stalls and then blocks until we have another tragedy. And so finally, we need to do something to raise the age of those who possess these weapons and stop them in instances where we can from even purchasing.
Phil Mudd, your business is terrorism, and to an extent, this is a terrorism. This is an act of terrorism here, a moment of terror. And one of the things that's been learned over the years and you had to deal with in your line of work was, how do you confront a terrorist, a killer in that moment? And in school shootings, one of the things that has been determined is you got to run toward the bullets if you are in law enforcement. You have to take that person on right away. It may not be worth waiting there. Why is that? How has that lesson been learned?
I mean, if you look again, going back to Marjory Stoneman Douglas and what we've been talking about in terms of training, that's the fundamental of what we expect from an officer, whether that's fire department, whether that's police department. It's what we saw in 9/11 with firemen going in and losing their lives in the Twin Towers because they're trained to say, go toward the bullets. Now, there's a technical piece here that I'd like to add, and that is perimeter security. And that's one of the conversations, obviously, about this school. One of the things you learned about terrorism and about individuals who are motivated to commit an act of violence like this is if they're confronted at the perimeter, their emotional state is such that they may begin firing there because they're afraid they're not going to get their chance. So the further out you can push them, and this gets into the question of locked doors, fences, etc., metal detectors in schools, the further out you can push them, the less likely that you'll get an incident inside a building because they're going to be so energized, they're going to act as soon as they confront somebody, John.
Yeah, and Sergeant Dorsey, that is one of the pieces of information we did learn this morning, is that the door that the shooter went in, we were told it was unlocked. That door was unlocked. So what should we be thinking about in terms of keeping schools, the physical plant, secure?
I know that no one wants to have a school site look like a prison, but I think it's time that we are inconvenienced. I think that we should err on the side of caution and we should put up obstacles so that Not anyone and everyone can easily enter a campus, and more importantly, enter a classroom and then barricade themselves inside with a vulnerable teacher and students who are unable to defend themselves.
Yeah, it does raise so many questions. Again, we're hoping and pushing for some answers. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Phil Mudd, thank you so much for being with us today.